And everyone. For those who may not know me, my name is Trayon White. I serve as the council member of the Great Ward 8. And tonight we're having our community budget meeting. We've had, I think this is our seventh or eighth one in the last 4 years. I was just got off the hearing with Chief with Mr. DeWitt, city chief financial officer, and we also had him on here before. We've had an in-person meeting with a number of council members. I've seen council member at large, Alyssa Silverman, join us already tonight. Um, and we do these partly to engage the public about the DC's budget, how the process, how the budget evolves, and to try to figure out our priorities. Typically, I prepare a budget and a narrative to send to the mayor as she prepares her budget based on the information she gets from her agencies. And then I have these public meetings where I take input from the public and send those to the mayor. I'm actually doing my letter to her tomorrow. So we had a few staff meetings, a few budget meetings within my office, but I also put it out to the public because the reality is I work for you guys. And we put that into the budget. Um, and so despite the significant uh, challenges facing the DC budget because of this global pandemic, the district ended FY 2020 in a strong financial position due to a strong income tax um, and strong financial position due to property tax growth, which offset the revenue losses. Also, as you may know, we had a rainy day fund that the government tapped into. We also had money that came in through the federal government. Now, we didn't get the full money that was due to the district because they treated us as a territory. That's why you hear a lot of us advocating for statehood. But nonetheless, we didn't take a big hit like we thought we were. We actually had more revenue coming in as more than projected. And so I want to thank the city administrator, uh, Mayor Muriel Bowser, the chief financial officer, and all their staff that went into this, and my other council colleagues. Um, we had a clean audit. This is our 24th consecutive clean audit in the district. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, um, and no yellow book report for the sixth consecutive year. That's to be commended. Um, the district actions, federal stimulus, and Federal Reserve actions limited the expected losses of tax revenue. COVID-19 recessions impacted the hospitality industry, retail, business service sectors, and I also just asked the city administrator, and the chief financial officer about money put in place from the district to strengthen small businesses because, as you know, they took a big hit and continue to take hits and facing going out of business, um, especially in this community. Um, so, and I say all this stuff to say that we are uh, doing fairly well financially. We have been. I've been in office 4 years, and every single year we not only deal well. The budget increase, I think, when I first got in was 14.5 billion, and we increased last year to 16.7 billion. But the sad reality, there are residents in the District of Columbia who are struggling every day. They don't feel the growth and prosperity in the District of Columbia, and we have to do all we can to change that narrative. We have a AAA bond rating in the district, and we have some of the growing industries in this area as it relates to hospitality, securities. You're talking about hospital and health. You're talking about IT. We're growing in a lot of these industries, but there's a population, especially of black people and brown people in the district, that's not growing. I remember the area median income when I first came in office was about $117,000, and that's including a DMV. That's $117,000 for a family of four. Now that number increased to about 121,000, maybe more now, in the district. Where we're facing economic crisis, and so we're trying to figure out as a government how can we utilize our position, resources, laws, and budget to not just talk about equality but equity in the District of Columbia to wards like Ward 8, Ward 7, and across the district who haven't seen the benefits economic empowerment, not just jobs, because I know we talk about jobs a lot. We know people need jobs, and we encourage jobs, but we talking about business ownership. And so tonight we're going to focus a little bit on the nonprofit world. And two, for me, I've been in the nonprofit field. I started a nonprofit some years ago called Helping Inner City Kids Succeed, and we had a number of thriving community-based organizations, community-based businesses, nonprofits, and people who just want to do good with their gifts and talents. But I've seen over the years that the money has dwindled down. In fact, one of the key places we used to go to get money, for those who may remember, was the DC Youth Family Investment Trust Fund. I know Dion remembers that. But that was closed down. The district government closed that agency. And we also had the Office of Partnerships and Grants, where you can go, which was on 4th Street. I remember Mr. Barnes used to work there as the executive director. I used to go there and sit on the computer and search for federal, local, and private dollars, and that closed down. And so there's been a drought as relates to our nonprofit sector. And I hear all the time, Mr. White, I have this idea, I have this ambition, I have this goal, I want to help these people do this. But we are steadily closing entities that's designed to put resources and direction. And then it may not always be money. It may be you might want to know how to do taxes, or may want to share account information, may want to know how to staff your organization, may want to know how to get grant writers or do proposals. And that type of expertise and knowledge is dwindling down in the city that need it now more than ever. And if you heard me on my mantra, you know that we've spent a lot of money on building buildings. We must use that same time, energy, and resource to build on the people, because there are a lot of people, especially people of color, who's been in the city through the crack epidemic, through the murder capital, that struggle to feed their family, that stay here during the long haul. They don't feel like DC is their home anymore. So we welcome new people to the city, but we don't want to forget about the people that's been here in the city for the long haul. So with that being said, I want to talk about why we do these budget meetings. Then we're going to open up to a plethora of resources and entities that will give you all some insight and different resources that we have prepared during the presentation. And real quick, before I go to Councilmember Alyssa Silverman, some of the things we've been able to accomplish with forums like this. We've had several meetings at the Rise Center, in the Wilson Building. We had it at Temple of Praise. We had Yang Temple. We had a number of these meetings throughout the wars over the years that, we've had a lot of packed houses. We've been accomplished. We got $15 million back into the budget to support the United Medical Center. When the budget got cut, we secured $21 million for a new Congress Heights Recreation Center. It was 18 originally, and I believe it's at 22 at the moment. We just had a meeting about that, I guess 2 nights ago, as the design build takes place. We secured $15 million in a recreation center in Anacostia at Ketchum. We secured $15 million in a new recreation center at Douglas, and $11 million for a new senior wellness center in Ward 8. And we're looking at sites like behind Kramer Middle School. We secured funds for Bar Early College High School, $13 million for the men's shelter with a day center. It may be more money in the budget now, and that's going to be in the St. Elizabeth East Campus as well. We secured funds for a permanent Excel School for girls. As you may know, the charter school closed down, and DCPS took it back over and was thinking about getting rid of the building. We secured $1 million for park improvements at Auction Run Park. We secured additional $1 million for a gym at Johnson Middle School, created a $300,000 pot of money for Ward 8 grocery grants, which supported food programs by Capital Area Food Bank and Community Connections. Secured funds for separation of water meters and Danbury Homeowners Association. That's a long story. The residents there, about 90-something houses on the same meter, and they had a bill of about $500,000. And we had some first-time home buyers who was in jeopardy of losing their home. And so we partnered with Councilmember Che, Phil Mendelson, and Mayor Bowser to help save those houses. I forgot all about that. We created a Ward 8 Equitable Food Incubator Grant, which supported the Dream Out Loud expansion into Ward 8. Secured $2 million in an 11 training in a training center called the DC Infrastructure Academy, and that wasn't all our doing. The mayor actually put the money in the budget from a lawsuit that we had, and it got taken away, and we fought to get it back in there. For those who remember that meeting, it was pretty intense. $200,000 for a Ward 8 grocery grant to create, put money into the project for a new grocery store that's on South Capitol in Atlantic. We supported that project that was already in the pipeline, and the list goes on and on. And I say this to say that these meetings are beneficial, and I believe that the power lies in people. And so we have to consistently organize around power. And we know that we can disagree on a lot of things, but the reality is, what can we as a community agree upon? And the moment we focus on that, then we have leverage to get what we need in our city, because the reality is these are your tax dollars in which we fight for to get equity in our community. And so I want to pause real quick and welcome one of my colleagues. And Wanda, let me know if there are any other colleagues here. Can you text one of my phones? Councilmember at large, Councilmember Alyssa Silverman, if you can give us some words, please.
Yes, hello. Good evening, Councilmember White, and good evening to everyone. First, let me, so I'm Alyssa Silverman. I'm one of the 4 at-large council members. Looking at some of the names, I know some of you, but I don't know everyone. So I want to thank Councilmember White for inviting me to be a part of tonight. And let me say, as he said, we're headed into budget season. So largely I'm here tonight to hear how you want your taxpayer dollars spent to help you, your families, and certainly the Ward 8 community. I'm going to be brief, but let me follow up on a few things Councilmember White said. So today we were in a hearing where we heard that our city is in a very good financial position. We have a lot of money. And that, I imagine, is probably surprising to a lot of you. It was a little surprising to me, I have to say, because I know a lot of people, perhaps even on this Facebook Live chat, are struggling, right? And so the question is, why are we hanging on to this money when we could be helping you? And that is something that I asked. I think Councilmember White asked those questions. And we're going to be continuing to pursue because this pandemic is a real economic crisis. And we need to make sure that we're using your dollars, taxpayer dollars, to make sure that you can keep your head above water and stay, and we can come out of this stronger. I'm chair of the Labor Committee, so some of you have been in touch with me. I know for some who've lost jobs, you are struggling to collect your unemployment, and it is frustrating. It is, and I continue to hammer away at our, and work with our Department of Employment Services because we know how unemployment is critical. Having that money is critical to staying afloat. I'll tell you specifically, Councilmember White put out a call for emergency action on the issue of gun violence. And I called him yesterday. Part of the reason I'm on tonight is I told him that I think it's urgent too, and that I want to partner with him and his office and my staff with his staff to figure out how we fund programs that will help and how we have a real strategy so that people aren't afraid to live in their neighborhoods and that the trauma that people are experiencing gets addressed in a real way. So I'm going to leave it there, but I'll put my contact information in the chat. I'll be listening intently tonight. And again, Councilmember White and staff, thank you for inviting me and look forward to the evening.
Thank you, Councilwoman Alyssa Silverman. We have a number of people on the agenda tonight, so we're going to ask that you bear with us as we go through the agenda. One of the next person you'll hear from is Nate Bennett Fleming, who's a lawyer, also in school getting his PhD. He's my committee director, who's been serving the residents of Ward 8 with me since I got in office. He's also lives in Ward 8, grew up here in Ward 8. Ward 7 a little bit too, but we're gonna forget all about that. But I would like to introduce Nate Bennett Fleming to talk about the budget process.
Right. Thank you, Councilmember White. So I'll briefly just be speaking on trying to demystify and just break down the budget process in the District of Columbia, which is a very unique budget process. So there's really four entities that really work on the DC budget, and there's four kind of phases of the DC budget. The first phase is the mayor's phase. The second phase is the council's phase. The third phase is the chairman's phase, and then ultimately the fourth phase goes back to the council as a whole. So in the first phase, which is the mayor, it begins with the revenue estimates by the chief financial officer, where we determine how much money the district has, how much money the mayor has to work with. And the mayor works with her budget director and her budget team, and they get input from the community and input from the various agencies of the district. And she gets input from the various council members. Many council members send letters and have meetings with the mayor to articulate their priorities. And that all comes together into a budget submission. And that budget submission can be found on ocfo.dc.gov every year. And it comes in written form to the council in a series of green books that contains the operating budget of the district. The operating budget of the district is the money that is used directly for the agencies for programs and staff. And then the capital budget of the district, which is essentially the credit card of the district, where we use loans to fund our building projects, like building new schools or modernizing recreation centers. So that submission comes to the council. At that point, the council has kind of the final say as it relates to the budget. So each committee has several agencies that are under their purview. And in this period, there's a period of budget oversight hearings. So each committee will hold hearings with each agency under their purview. And these will be an opportunity for the public to give input on the specific agencies and specifically what they would want from those agencies moving forward. It also is an opportunity for the council members and members of the committees to engage with the directors of the agencies to kind of analyze their past budget performance so that they can work in terms of crafting a stronger budget for those agencies. So the committees of the council are really important at this point because they essentially have full control over the budgets of the agencies under their purview. So the committee directors, my colleagues, we work with the chief financial officer's office to essentially craft these budgets, and we work to articulate with other staffs to fund the priorities of the various council members. So sometimes budgets are cut, sometimes budgets are expanded at this point, and it all leads up to the committee markup process. So at that point, each committee has a meeting and they vote on the particular budgets for the agencies under that committee. At that time, the budget then goes to the chairman. So that's the third phase, which is the chairman's phase. And it's important to note that at each of these phases, there's an opportunity for the public to give input. So it's important for the public to know kind of where the budget is. So when it's the mayor's time, that's the opportunity to go to the mayor's forums and give input there. At the council's time, there's an opportunity to go to the budget hearings or to send letters or to advocate to your council members. At the chairman, now the budget goes all to the chairman, and he can take all of those committee budgets and change them as any way that he likes. Often he doesn't make major changes to the budgets that the committees have passed, but he definitely does make changes. So after he makes his changes and funds the priorities that he thinks are important, then the budget comes to the council as a whole. So that's the fourth phase, the full council. And then there's two votes, as with any piece of legislation in DC. And in these two votes, there's often amendments that are made by the council members to the budget that the chairman submitted. So after that process, the budget is final, and then it goes to Congress, and that's a brief overview of the DC budget process. Thank you. You're on mute, Councilman.
Sir.
Thank you. I should know this by now. I've been doing Zooms for feel like 2 years, 10 years now. But nonetheless, I want to thank Nate for that information. That information is important because we want to get you to a place where you can advocate for your thoughts, your business, your nonprofit, your vision, your dreams, and things you want to see happen in this budget and in the ward and in the district. And there will be a layout of the budget hearings coming up because we want you to participate. There are a lot of different things that happen on the city council, but the reality is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And the people that need the resource the most sometimes are the least active. And so we want to activate the community to get more involved because we're losing too many lives in the community to senseless violence. Too many resources have been taken away from the community while we sit down and do business as usual. And so we are having a follow-up to this particular conversation next Thursday at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom. And it's going to be a smaller breakdown so we can learn more because it's going to be very a pack-filled Zoom today. Dealing with the budget and also trying to empower nonprofit entities. Give me a second. I got to look up my notes. All right. There we go. So next we have presenting Mr. Tommy Jones, who is the Chief of External Affairs. The reason we have DPR on the Zoom is because I hear all the time, I have a program, I have an idea, but I don't have space. Or I have a group of people and we're meeting outside, or how do I get funding? And so we invited Mr. Jones, who's a great guy, first of all. I wouldn't be saying this to be saying it because you're on the Zoom, right?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But tell us a little bit about DPR's role in supporting the community and nonprofits and activities in the community.
Well, first, council member, thank you. And, I've been in district government now for the past 6 years. And I think some way, somehow, I have had an opportunity to be in Ward 8, and I've had an opportunity to see you in action. And in all that you've done, you've really tried to highlight Ward 8 at its best, that it is a ward that is for the people, by the people, and is doing great things, and everyone throughout the district should know about it. And so my job at DPR is to work with the community. Parts of my role is community engagement, partnerships and development, and really to work with community groups, organizations to work and be a part of our facilities. So to answer your question, I want to talk about it in two different ways. One, you were correct in your opening statements. There are a number of projects that we work with our colleagues at the Department of General Services that will have an assortment of opportunities in terms of small businesses, nonprofits, and others being involved. So keep an eye on that. And as these projects move towards the needle, we'll definitely make sure that individuals are engaged. In terms of contracting opportunities, we have an assortment of opportunities from class instructors that teach classes like dance, art, poetry, music, using our garden space, or sports instructors like from tennis and fitness and basketball and football and cheer, and even our aquatic instructors. And then, as you know, being involved in Parks and Rec for a while, we also would have a large portion of where we look for individuals in procurement, really, in terms of our summer camps and our summer program offerings. So, from arts and crafts to supplies, we look to have opportunities where we support district families throughout, and where we need vendors to be involved. And then the last part is, just daily operations. At times we can use vendors and things. So a couple of things that I'm going to do today. One, council member, I'm going to put in the chat for individuals our contracts and procurement officer, so that individuals will know how to contact her if they have a particular business or program. Natasha Baker will be able to help those individuals when they want to do business and work with the solicitation process. My contact information is in there as well, already in the chat. And why are you individuals wanting to do use space, or have a program idea or a nonprofit and want to do work? We work to create partnership agreements with those individuals, organizations, and groups. We have a series of things that we work with those individuals on a case-by-case basis, and we work to make sure that those opportunities are beneficial to all residents involved that need that particular program or service that individuals are offering. So, council member, that sort of concludes my remarks. If you would like me to respond to anything else, I'm more than happy to as well.
Did you speak on space, reserving space?
I can. So, we do have, DPR, I believe we have 78 recreation centers throughout the district. So one thing is when we talk about space, we have our permitting system. So, individual can go in, place a permit, and will fall in the district's priority order. And that's, from schools to nonprofits and so forth. And then, and I'm going to do this. I see a couple of things. So my contact information for those that aren't available. So it's TOMMIE.Jones, JONES, @dc.gov, or my phone number, which is 202-431-8676. And that is in the chat, and I know you all will provide it, but to those that are, thank you. And so in the space we do work, you can also go on DPR's webpage at dpr.dc.gov and then click on the permit section. You'll find wherever you need space. But for those that are looking for opportunities, they're a nonprofit, they want to provide a program or something, we work with them. Our permitting office works with them. But also when they're looking to create programs and working with DPR programs, that's where my office will work with them to create what's called a partnership agreement. I hope that answered your question, council member.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Jones. We're going to move right ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up. Now we want to hear from the DC Arts and Humanities Commission, who is now DC Commission on Arts and Humanities, Dr. Sarik Brand, and forgive me if I say it wrong, you can correct me. They call me Trayvon all the time, so.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Councilmember White. This is, I think, our first meeting. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I've been an admirer from a distance as well with your work with the COVID relief and the community-based work. It's just very inspiring to see you knocking on doors and delivering groceries, and I'm just so appreciative of the work that you do. Thank you also for the team for inviting me to this meeting. I am serving in the role of Executive Director for the Commission on Arts and Humanities. I welcome this opportunity to just share with you kind of where we are with our budget and what the sort of recent past has been and sort of what the next stretch looks like. As many of you might know, our agency is now an independent agency within district government. And one of the things that happened in connection to that is that the nature and the source of our budget has shifted. It does not draw so heavily anymore from local funds, and it depends instead on dedicated taxes, on a percentage of the dedicated taxes that come to the agency. there's pros and cons to this. There is a little bit of nail biting, kind of not knowing, whether the projections and the actual revenue collections will, sort of match. And so we've had to be very prudent to be both responsive and responsible in terms of prioritizing grant funding, absorbing the hits elsewhere, and making sure that a lot of the money goes out in grants to the community. I think we've done this fairly well last year. There was a lot of sort of unexpected outcomes because of the COVID and the COVID issues and then the shortfalls that were projected for district government budget. We've also managed to pivot successfully, I think, in FY21 because a lot of organizations and individuals, artists, were struggling with with needing more money to just operate. And so we were able to remove a lot of the barriers in match fund requirements and project scope requirements to adjust to the reality that people were struggling with. Our agency, as some of you may know, part of the budget draws from the National Endowment for the Arts monies, so federal funds. And we were tasked, as were other state arts agencies around the US, to distribute some CARES funding across the board, across all 8 wards. Through the appropriated $75 million that Congress had appropriated for the NEA. We were able to distribute these funds successfully. We had a lot of new applicants come through the door, individuals who had never before applied to anything that we had offered. And so and then later on in the year, as our revenue collections picked up, we were able to match these same dollars from the agency budget to provide additional funding to artists and arts and humanities organizations. So an additional 2.5 million or so that we were able to push out the door. Outside of grants and grant programs, we also do public art installations and renovations around the district. And one of the unexpected outcomes of the COVID situation was that a lot of the outdoor mural art projects and restoration projects were able to happen. So we completed the Chinatown Friendship Archway conservation project. It took about 3.5 years to get done. It was really wonderful seeing it come back to life. A lot of craftspeople came from New York. The original architect, Mr. Alfred Liu, was there, and we managed to get that done in a timely way. We were also able to pivot internally, kind of get some of our curatorial grant programs up and running quickly, kind of switch over to an online platform and a design of our gallery space online so that our curators were able to put 2 exhibitions on. And the walkthrough experience, of course, in its own way, the technology allows for a broad reach outside of local here in DC. So that turned out to be also really good. I'll just end by saying right now, we do, for those of you who may be new to our agency, we do fund both individuals and organizations. We have general operating support grant funds. We have, these are all, of course, competitive grants. We have capacity building grants. We have project-based grants. And we have also managed to really focus on our money going to Ward 8, making sure that we have an East of the River program that's focused very much on Ward 7 and 8. And we've made sure that it is Ward 8 resident organizations that are getting funded now, specifically beginning last year. So we're constantly tweaking, constantly kind of listening to what the community needs are. And we're open and willing and really, present in working towards the success of all of you in the community. My contact details are in the email, and I'm happy to respond to questions. Thank you, Council Member.
Thank you. Real quick, how much is your budget for your agency?
Right now, again, the projected budget is about the grants budget is about 31 million, and the overall budget is about 34 million right now.
And of that, how much do you give out in grants?
31 goes out. So 77% of our overall budget goes out in grants. 23% remains for admin costs.
And it's my understanding that you all had a certain pot of money set aside for East of the River organizations, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you speak to that, and what's the mission and vision behind that?
Yes, the East of the River grant program focuses on both organizations, organizations that are resident organizations that put on arts and humanities programs and experiences for residents living east of the Anacostia River. This is a program, it is a program for arts and humanities mission organizations, and it is up to $35,000. No match is required. That's another thing that we built in. There is no match required for that specific grant program. The grant program manager is named Khalid Randolph, Dr. Khalid Randolph. He's a longtime staff member with the agency. I think he may be in the audience now listening in, but he is wonderful. He is always present for folks that need support in applying to grants. And also, this may be useful to know that our grant cycles begin around early May. So please look out for announcements that will sort of launch our entire group of grant programs. Our general operating support grant program just opened last week for FY22. So please reach out to me, reach out to Khalid, and or reach out to anyone really who's a grant manager who can point you in the right direction once the cycle opens up for application support.
Week.
Absolutely. We are there. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I think Wanda said there's a question for you.
Sure thing.
In
the chat, maybe? Oh, okay.
Yes, it says, how can the East of the River grant funding amount be increased?
So there is a lot of conversations within the agency and with the commissioners on how to divvy up the money. We are constantly pushing to increase monies for East of the River. I'm glad that question was asked. Year after year, we have increased funding year over year for Ward 8. The number of the percentage of applications awarded has also been increased. So really, it is about letting us know, letting commissioners know, letting council know that there is that need, and we are, we're as responsive as we can be with what we have, but really it is a matter of the community, speaking to that. So there are some legislated grant pots. There are some other grants that are sort of flexible on our side of things, and so we basically usually we look at last year's application numbers, we look at the need, and we assign a percentage. So I say, please just reach out to us, reach out to the grant manager, and let us know what the needs are.
Doc, real quick, I was one time a nonprofit organization trying to find funding, and I hear all the time, and the narrative is that, we have smaller organizations that don't win the grants because they may not be able to pay for a professional grant writer, or they may not have the resources to own a space. And a lot of times there are these larger organizations that get the grants all the time but may not have connectivity in the community. And what they may do is double back and get somebody from the community to run the program because they got the grant. So they actually almost still granting the money out. Like they don't have the connectivity, not in the community, don't have nobody in their programs. So what do you say to a smaller organization that's growing, grassroots, that's trying to get their foot in the door that may not have a grant writer or any, just starting out?
Councilmember White, I'm so glad you brought up that question. We have been grappling with, as most state arts agencies, all issues related to equity, racial equity, really, but equity since the summer. What we have done is at the sort of under the leadership of our commission chair, Kay Kendall, and our commissioner, Cora Masters Barry, we have been engaged in a 6-month sort of deep look at what does equity mean now, for the community. And so part of the answer to that is to really right size our funding amounts and really look at small and medium sized organizations so that the value that's assigned to the work that they do is as equal as the large organizations that are, sort of the backbone of the creative economy in the arts in the district. So we're trying to come up with a scenario that addresses all these needs. It is really important that we do that because a lot of us, I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Ethiopia, but I know for me what the arts meant growing up in Ethiopia. And for most of us, it is a place where our imagination opens up, where our excitement and our creativity and our problem solving skills get a space to grow. And so to me, these neighborhood, small after school programs, grassroots organizations are really the glue that hold together communities often. So I can assure you, just based on, my word here now, that our team is doing a really deep look at what that means. And for FY22, I'm hoping we can present to the community a very reasonable option to how funding is done.
So let me ask you this, and this is my last question. So is it part of your strategy to give more preference points? Because I'm assuming that when people apply for grants, they get points for this, points for that. How are you ensuring that there's equity for someone who's applying?
So
and to address the issue of matching funds, because that was also an issue that I found that you have to have for some of the grants, you have to have a certain level of matching funds to qualify, and organizations may not have the matching funds.
Yeah. So we are doing away in this next year anyway, because everybody's budgets are shot. The organizations are suffering under the COVID aftermath. So most of the requirements for matching funds for organizations, I think 500,000 and below budget size. That's the consideration we're looking at now, is to remove all the matching fund requirements for this next year. As it relates to equity, what we're trying to do is make equity a part of the criteria, the eligibility criteria, so people are able to gain points by showing their equity work and their board diversity, their program diversity, their management diversity, so that you can actually, it's weighted against what panelists score on. So that should place people with good equity programs in place ahead of the game in terms of how they're scored by panelists. We're also beginning to collect demographic information across the board. This is a first time attempt really to get data in hand about how folks are working with equity, through the equity lens and with the equity metrics in place. And I'll put my information again in the chats because I think more people may have joined.
Can you audibly say it for those who can't see the chat right now so they can get it real quick?
Yes, indeed. So my email address is my first name, HERAN, like Nancy, dot, my last name is hyphenated, Sarak Abrahan, so SEREKE dot, B like boy, RHAN, like Nancy, the number 2, and at dc.gov. Please do reach out. We're here to serve.
Thank you so much. We look forward to the work this will be done.
And next week it'll be Khalid. Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Glenn Ogilvie. Before we hear from Glenn, I just got some clarity that the Office of Partnerships and Grants folded and is now underneath Serve DC. And so they're no longer a standalone government agency. They're underneath of Serve DC, and the website is still active. So Mr. Ogilvie, Glenn was around during the time that I was out doing nonprofit work, and now he's transitioned and has been there for quite some time now at the Center for Nonprofit Advancement. And they've helped a lot of organizations tremendously leverage resources because everybody might can't afford an accountant, may not can afford lawyers, or may not can afford a back office. And so, Glenn, are you here? Glenn, if you can hear, jump on the screen. I don't see you.
He's here.
Okay.
Looks like we just lost him.
Okay.
So if you want to go to the next, and I'll make sure that I'll notify you when he's back in.
He just
Okay,
put in
great.
the chat that he was there.
He's there where? You tell him to turn the screen on. Is he have the right login information?
Well, let me see if he's in. Let me see if he's in the panel. Maybe if he's in the panel, let me promote him.
He's in as a participant.
Okay, let me bring him on.
Thank you. And while we're doing, I'm doing a commercial. I know Anari and Egypt are watching. I have me some water here.
Okay, I am bringing him in now. So, Mr. Ogilvy, you should be now as a panelist.
All right. Well, while we work on that, we're going to skip ahead. We're going to come back to Mr. Ogilvy and go to Events DC. I did see Brian on here. Brian, are you presenting, or is Teresa Du Bois presenting, who is the acting director of community engagement from Events DC?
Collaboratively. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But first, it's going to start it over.
Turn your computer on so we can know this.
Hi there, council member. Thank you.
You make it happen. Okay, I like that.
Well, thank you so very much. We appreciate being invited to participate in this great forum. I've already learned some information that I need to take back to our office. For those of you who don't know, I'm Teresa Dubois, and I am, as Councilmember White said, the Acting Director of Community Engagement for Events DC. I just wanted to share a little information about our organization before I turn it over to a familiar face in Ward 8, and that's our own Brian Atkins. But Events DC is the face of conventions, sports, entertainment, and cultural events here in the nation's capital. Our divisions reflect 3 lines of business: conventions and meetings, sports and entertainment, and creative services, where we make strategic investments in the region's marquee sports, entertainment, and cultural properties. Some that are probably familiar to most of you, and that would be the National Cherry Blossom Festival Parade, the Washington International Horse Show, the City Open Tennis Tournament, and the DC Jazz Fest, just to name a few. And of course, those major events would usually be held in person, but due to COVID-19, most of them have been virtual events since April of last year, and showcased on our virtual event space called Gather, which is located on the Events DC website, eventsdc.com. We'll drop the information in the chat before we leave. Our venues are located across the district, and they include the Walter E. Washington Convention Center, the Carnegie Library at Mount Vernon Square, which is now a flagship Apple store, the RFK Stadium, the fields at RFK, the festival grounds at RFK, the RFK Skate Park, and the non-military portions of the DC Armory. We also manage Nationals Park, and in the Ward 8 community, we manage the Entertainment and Sports Arena, Gateway DC, and the RISE Demonstration Center. So in addition to hosting events, we're also very proud of our commitment to the DC community. And this evening, we'd like to share information about our citywide Events DC Community Grant Program. And so as I mentioned, I am joined by my colleague, Brian Atkins, who manages community relations for Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium and the entertainment and sports arena campuses. So, Brian, please go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, and thanks for having us. And I just want to speak a little bit on behalf of Events DC regarding our Events DC Community Grant Program. So Events DC is happy to be a good neighbor to communities where our venues are located. And our grant programs helps us to support amazing youth activities in neighborhoods throughout the district. The Events DC Community Grant Program provides financial support to District of Columbia nonprofit organizations who are dedicated to supporting youth in the areas of sports, entertainment, performing, or cultural arts. So in fiscal year 2021, which began in October 2020, Events DC is looking to award $500,000 during 2 competitive grant cycles, $250,000 in the first cycle and $250,000 in the current cycle, which we're in now. Applications for FY 2021 cycle number 2, the applications are due on March the 1st, 2021. So a little bit about the individual grants. The single grants will range from $2,500 to $25,000. However, it depends on the number of grants awarded in each cycle and the types and nature of the programs being funded. Grantees may not receive the full amount of funding requested. So that's saying if you apply for $25,000, you may not receive the max, but that doesn't disqualify you as well. You may receive a partial amount of that. So we're currently accepting applications for cycle 2 of the fiscal year 2021. And like I said, application deadline is March the 1st, 2021. And I just want to give you a little bit of information on what you must have to qualify for the Events DC grant. So you must be a DC-based nonprofit organization certified as tax exempt by the IRS under Section 501c3 of the U.S. Tax Code and granted an exemption from DC income and franchise taxes. You must utilize grant funding for programs or projects that support youth-focused performing or cultural arts in the District of Columbia. And lastly, you must present a copy of an annual financial audit conducted by a certified public accountant for your organization's most recent fiscal year. Or if you don't have an annual financial audit, you can provide us with an IRS 990 form for the most recent tax year. And you can learn more about the Community Grants Program on eventsdc.com. And you look under the Community tab in the right-hand corner and you click on Community Grants. And that will give you everything you need to know for the grant application deadline and how to submit your applications. And as Councilmember White, you alluded to earlier, the smaller nonprofits, we do provide information sessions on how to submit a complete application. And I want to post that on, and I'm going to post it on the chat as well. So we do have information sessions on tomorrow, both one held at 1 p.m. and one held at 6 p.m. And everything is on Zoom, as you know, much as everything else is on a Zoom platform right now as well. So that's about the Events DC Community Grants Program. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat section. And I'm trying to put the information for the information sessions in the chat now.
Thank you, Brian. And what's the website that people can go to for tomorrow?
It's eventsdc.com and look under the Community Grants tab. And I put it in the chat as well. But I'm trying to I'm going to copy the information session as well.
Okay. And we do want to note that if you have a nonprofit or applying for your 501c3 or whatever tax status you're applying for, please put your name, information, and contact information in the chat because we're going to save this and put it into our database so we can follow up. Please know that your blessing is in your follow-up. This is an information session today, but we want to build on it during this budget season and hope to get you where you need to be to help people in the community. So put your information in the chat. I know some people are on the Zoom platform, some people are on Facebook, but put it in the chat. You know, if you don't get our notices, please sign up for our weekly newsletter so you can get this stuff all the time. And it's at Trayon White, TRAYON White, the number 8.com, Trayon White gmail.com. I see that brother Glenn Ogilvie is here. If you can come on and share what you do and what's the mission and vision of the Center for Nonprofit Advancement. Come on in, Glenn. Thank you, Brian. And I see that you are unmuted, but I don't see your face.
Councilmember White, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but your camera is not on.
Oh, great. I think the host muted my camera, so I'm unable to start it.
KJ Kai Brown Foundation.
There we go.
There we go. Now I can see you, but now I don't hear you. Man, we gotta get you some new technology over here at the Center for Nonprofit Advancement. I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you. So you might want to log out and log back in.
We can hear him, council member.
How about that? Can you hear me now?
Can't hear anything.
Yeah,
No one can hear you.
we can
I
hear,
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear him.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I think Councilmember White, maybe just you're unable to hear me? This is strange.
You're talking, brother. But again, we can't hear you.
Can you
Log out and log back in.
All right, let me go ahead.
Sometimes the computer does that.
Let me do that.
While we're waiting for Glenn, he's having a little technical
We
difficulty.
were able to hear him.
Is Shari here?
I think the council member can't hear us.
Yeah.
Shari here?
Let me text him.
Dash Bailey?
Yeah.
Shari? Wanda, can you move Shari to a panelist, please? And Shari is a grant writer. Oh, it's my computer. Is it my computer that's tripping them? Nod your head, Ms. Skills.
I don't know, but I'm like, I'm here.
It's your computer.
See everybody nodding their head. Oh, go ahead, Glenn. Well, let me just give me some technology. What's going on with this council, man?
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
I'm gonna go back off screen. Glenn is gonna talk now.
You can
If
say
you
it
can
right
come back, Ms. Gills, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Listen, I want to apologize for the technology. I think it was my login not having the presenter credentials. But Councilmember White, thank you. I heard everything leading up to the faux pas for myself and the great introduction and even the water advertisement. So thank you for reminding us to stay hydrated. So I'm glad that everyone can hear me. Again, my name is Glenn Ogilvie and I'm the CEO at the Center for Nonprofit Advancement. I'm really honored to be here and share space with all of you this evening to talk about the importance of nonprofit organizations, especially in this critical time. Two things that are on my mind. One is the dual or sometimes trifecta of a pandemic we are in, what COVID-19 has done to the community, what racial unrest and race issues have done to our communities, and the fact that nonprofits are always at the forefront of fixing and addressing these challenges for people in community in need, for people in communities in need. So what we're doing at the center and what we've been doing for the past 41 years is ensuring that nonprofits are able to sustain and adjust in a changing environment, much like the one we're in now. What that means is supporting capacity building at every level of the organization, from the board to volunteers, supporting organizations to share space with each other and collaborate when necessary to create greater efficiencies. Lots around advocacy, and also a ton, as the council member mentioned, around back office and administrative services, helping to ensure the financial management is strong, just as well as the fundraising, the insurance policies and processes, etc. There are a couple things that we realized over 2020, much like the rest of us, and we realized the strain that the pandemic has put on organizations that were well-equipped and well-funded. The first effort that we thought necessary to undertake was what we refer as our sector rebuilding campaign to support organizations going through what we know as this new normal. And through that campaign, we wanted to support organizations over a 3-year period, just for starters, in 3 key ways. And those ways were first with evaluation to know where we are and what the impact has been on all of us. The second, education, to bring forward opportunities for organizations and philanthropy even to learn about what's happening on the ground and support organizations in the key areas and ways that is necessary. And then finally, action.
And the action is what I want to spend the most of my time on, and I won't go much longer than maybe 5 minutes. The action for us is crisis management technical assistance, helping organizations to respond, drafting fundraising proposals for organizations, making sure they have all of their systems in place to be competitive. And I know the council member also mentioned that some organizations don't have the resources to hire a grant writer. But I do want to mention and make sure that we share that the center is able to provide even that level and depth of support for organizations through this time. I want to push us a little bit on the urgency that we're feeling right now. And I want to push us with a key data fact that came out of the Charities Aid Foundation last year. And the data point was that without intervention, a third of nonprofits would go out of business and not make it over the next 12 months. That 12 months is now. We're in month 2 of that 12-month period. We realize that in some cases, grant funding is not possible because of the time it takes. So I want to push us to focus on some other areas, to focus on resources we can obtain from individuals, from corporations, from government, which we're talking about here today, and even earned income. So crisis management, technical assistance, pulling resources from wherever we can, focusing on our sustainability so we can be present for the community. I'm going to also mention 2 final things. One, how important it is to collaborate, because our organizations don't often come together. The center is facilitating that so that organizations can work in groups of 2 and 3 to identify and leverage resources that neither one organization or none of the organizations could identify on their own. Last and closing point is research that we did during the study phase of this sector rebuilding campaign. We shared and invited 1,000 people personally to respond to a data study that was commissioned by the center from Brighter Strategies, a research organization here in the region. That study was key because it uncovered a lot of what we already knew about the way in which the pandemic is impacting organizations. We had 255 organizations to respond to the data. The large majority of organizations were located in the District of Columbia, and the majority of district organizations that responded were located or serving wards 7 and 8. What we know is that there are racial inequities just as much as there are COVID-19 and pandemic challenges. We know that less than a third, less than 3% of all funding that went to organizations in the region went to organizations led by people of color. So that further exacerbates the issue of lack of funding, organizations that are not prepared and needing to get support as much as they can so that they're not going away in their entirety over the course of this next 12 months. So I'm going to pause there. I'm happy to take questions and to share more, and also to put my contact information in the chat. And one more time, I apologize for the challenges in getting on.
Check 1, check 2.
All right, check 1.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Ogilvy? Real quick, can you talk about some of how you help nonprofits to leverage resources inside the organizations?
Yes.
To small organizations, vice versa?
Sure. So we're supporting organizations of all sizes and all areas of focus. We're supporting organizations one-on-one and organizing with them what we're referring to as an organizational assessment to see areas where they're challenged, and then developing professional development or capacity building plans that speak to that individual organization. Through the pandemic, we have written and drafted proposals for organizations using information from their websites and their 990s, only checking in with them for an hour or so to confirm and then submit. That was important because many were on the front line, unable to go remote, and serving people in need through the pandemic, not having proper PPE in some cases. So we're able to meet organizations wherever they are and move them to the next level. We're matching board members with organizations if you need board members. We're connecting for fiscal sponsorship opportunities if you don't yet have your tax exemption and need that level of support. We're hands on deck, ready to go for organizations that need it to ensure that we're supporting the community.
Thank you. Will you be willing to open more up to a smaller Zoom platform for some of those on this Zoom and abroad today?
Sure, absolutely. Look forward to doing that.
All right, so we'll make that happen. And you already put your information in the chat, correct?
I did. I'm going to put it in there one more time. See, there's a good amount of activity, which is great.
Okay. Any other questions? I have one right here. Do you all work with organizations who have not have a strong fiscal background, have not been able to get grants or funds?
We do. And when we talk about capacity building, it ranges from classes, previously known as workshops, but we're very intentional in the curriculum. So classes that focus from a basic to an advanced level. Those are happening on a regular basis. There are about 100 opportunities per year to do that, and even more now as we've gone completely virtual to meet people in their homes or wherever they are. Those opportunities are one that you can self-select, but we are able to connect with you directly to understand your situation and recommend the best path forward. So the answer is yes for small organizations.
Thank you. And now, Dion, give me the yay or nay real quick so I can know to make sure we good. Yay. Okay. You don't need an introduction, Dion. Come on.
Thank you, Council Member. Hi, Glenn. It's so good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm a little nasal for all of you wonderful COVID warriors out there. I've already had the rapid test. I'm good. It's just a head cold. So I want to apologize. I want to get through this, but I do have my colleague on the line as well, Nikita Beans, and I put her information in the chat, as well as Vera Johnson, who actually manages our grant process at Far Southeast Family Strengthening Collaborative. So first, thank you, Council Member and his team, for inviting us to share the work of Far Southeast Collaborative and what we're doing in Ward 8. Additionally, the other council members who are here, thank you for your service and what you're doing. I also want to do a quick shout out to Nate. Nate, that was phenomenal. You should do a quick class on that for every one of our community meetings. It was dead on, and it really helped us understand that process, and it was very basic. So thank you, Nate, for the way you presented that. I wanted to shout you out for that, because advocacy is the most important part of this presentation, because if we're not advocating, we're unable to actually orchestrate these grant opportunities. So I don't know if I have the access to share my screen, but I definitely want to make sure. I think I can.
Yes, I can access. You should be able to.
Okay. I'm not as great at this as my staff. Can you all see this? Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. I'm one up, Wanda. I'm one up. I'm excited. Excited. So Far Southeast Collaborative, we're celebrating 25 years of service to Ward 8. If I could clap, that would be a round of applause to the wonderful people who started this organization, some of which are on this line, community folk doing the right thing to service their community. So I'm excited to be the executive director in their 25th anniversary. I'm humbled by this opportunity, and we want to make sure that the resources that we have continue to get out into this community like we've done for so many years. So this is a brief slide about our mission and some great pictures about you see our staff and some of the community members that we serve. But our real work outside of the very known work that we've done in the child welfare arena is really to be a catalyst to sustain partnerships, develop opportunities for the community to sustain itself. So that's why Far Southeast has always been a different type of collaborative. We focused on child welfare, but we also realized that some of the greatest issues in Ward 8 was neglect. And that tied directly into economics. And what we mean by that is, if we can build and sustain wonderful organizations with great infrastructure who can service their community, then we can rebuild the community and infuse economics, education, and opportunity. So that's how the collaboratives have always seen our work. So that's why many grants have always been something we've always wanted to do and build capacities of others. These are some tips that I just wanted to share with everyone, you guys. I'm fine, just a little out of breath because I'm talking and I got this congestion, so please forgive me. The foundation of an organization is everything, and that's what's critical. And I want to say that a lot of times we don't look at nonprofits like they're businesses. And that's what we have to do differently. As you listen to these opportunities, you want to recognize that you are orchestrating and managing a business. So your foundation has to be critically important financially, And critically important that you have the right people in place to serve your community. Really quickly, understand your lane and try to orchestrate and perfect your craft in your lane. Sometimes we try to do a little bit too many things. And what happens is people don't really know what's your craft. What do you do best? And once you can identify that, that's the lane you want to stay in as you continue to grow and develop your capacity to serve in other lanes. Make sure you control your communication. What is being said about your organization? One of the things that's always been important to me is I'm not really big on social media, so I give up my social media to people who know how to do it and make us look great. People should want to get in contact with you based on the work you're doing and the communication that you're offering, as well as your branding. And that's important. Everything isn't for social media, and I'll leave that one there. That's a whole nother session, council member. But resources. How do you ascertain resources? Well, once you have the right people, you've perfected your craft, you present yourself to organizations like Far Southeast and start off small. It's nothing wrong with that. Right now, in this 1 year, fiscal year FY20, we've been able to award $100,000 to 11 district organizations who are actively engaging undocumented citizens, gig workers, and returning citizens who've come home since March 11th to get $1,000. We gave out resources for organizations to help get people to the table. We just had a round of capacity building grants. We're going to, again, invitation only. Why am I saying invitation only? What we're not going to do is we're not setting people up for 80 people to apply for $60,000. That's unfair to you. That's unfair to you. But we have a grant that more people can get, and it isn't capacity building grant. We are actively engaging those partners, sometimes who get overlooked, who don't have the big name organization behind them, and who have actively solidified a part of the community and can target a population, and people are listening to what they're doing. The next piece that we're offering, our mini grants are coming back. I tell people if I had to do anything, coming back to Far Southeast, I wanted to start the mini grant process again. We are instituting our mini grant process. We're focusing a first round of attention on our Congress Heights community, but we were blessed to get some resources from Events DC. Thank you for the Events DC team. We're now able to do additional grants throughout the ward through the resources we're getting from there. So we're starting our spring, summer mini grant process again. And finally, we're going to be doing some capacity building business infrastructure programming to help some of our smaller organizations build your capacity to be able to compete in some of the larger markets. So that's Far Southeast. That's what we're here to do. The right people are on this call. I put their information in the chat. So I'm going to stop here. And if there are any questions for me, I'll pause.
Thank you, Dion. Let's call you Miss Rita. Are there any questions, Wanda, in the chat for Miss Rita?
There are no chats for Miss Rita, but there are questions. I think Jules going to begin to answer some of those questions. Jules, are you ready for any questions?
Yes, but I don't see any on my end. The last comment that I have is from Wendy, but it's just a post on East of the River.
All right, so
I'm sorry, there is a question, more so of a comment about a gym. This is not for Far Southeast, it's a general question. There is a need for a gym in Ward 8. Ward 8 is the only ward without an actual gym that is owned by people from the community. We understand that we have recreational centers, but there is a need for investment to bring a gym to Ward 8. We Fit DC have been advocating for funding to bring the first gym to Ward 8, and we have not been able to secure funding. Invest in We Fit DC and our goals to improve health and wellness in Ward 8.
Thank you. That must have come from Joe. We got it, Joe. I think, Joe, you should put together a comprehensive proposal, as we talked about, and submit it.
Here's a question. How are organizations are targeted for capacity building? This, I guess, is for Far Southeast.
So for the announcement that we actually just put out was we were focusing our attention on 2 different curriculums that we currently orchestrate. And we were doing it inside of the DC jail. And we had another partner When COVID hit, like everyone else, we went to virtual platforms and we lost the target population. We're doing a parenting program, nurturing parenting and quenching a father's thirst. The target population are Ward 8 residents between the ages of 18 to 30, with children under the age of 18 or 0 to 5. The reason why it's 2 because it's 2 different curriculums. And one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to identify organizations that still had virtual platforms in every quadrant of the ward. So we sent out, based on the community engagement team that we currently have, looked at some of the opportunities that we know are out there, engaged some of the people like We Fit DC, who if we don't engage them, they're not at the table. Love More, some of the smaller organizations that are doing things, because we have larger contracts. So that's the first round. So one of the things you need to do is get to know us. Reach out to Far Southeast, get to know Nikita, get to know what we're doing, support our full collaborative meetings, engage with us, and we'll engage you around our capacity building because we don't want to do this work. We want you guys to do it. So reach out to the people in the chat. If you have my email address, I have people that can connect right to you, and we'll connect you to the capacity building opportunities that we're going to bring out this spring.
Councilmember, there are 2 additional questions. Is grant funding available for organization that's nonprofit but not yet that is nonprofit but not recognized as a 501c3? Is
she asking me? Because I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Doing our mini grant program, we're going to work with individuals and nonprofits, helping you to become a nonprofit or a business entity.
And then the next question is, what training is available for smaller organizations to effectively apply for the grant opportunities to maximize grant writing costs? Is that something that you can answer? Yes, if you can answer that.
Sure. We partner all the time and we provide, I have a person that writes for us. We provide support. You just want to connect with the right people. So connect with Nikita, get on our mailing list, connect with us, and we'll connect you with the support you need. That capacity building opportunity is what I'm speaking of. We're going to have a virtual platform that's similarly to connect you to grant writers and build out your program.
Thank you so much.
I have one question, Ms. Rita, that you may be able to answer. If not, I'll just leave it. The question is, are there any grant opportunities for small minority-owned enterprises within the arts sector, like graphic or digital design community endeavors?
Most of the time, we have to do subcontracting. Your council member makes sure that a certain amount of our resources go directly back to businesses who are CBE. That's the lane that I would really refer to businesses to talk to the CDCs that we have in the ward, Anacostia, Congress Heights, and then definitely our very own Stan Jackson with the Anacostia, because they help businesses. I support businesses, but I wouldn't be able to get you in that lane directly.
Thank you.
So we just had Arts and Humanities Commission on as well. They should explore with them as well. And for those who are just joining, please make sure you put your name, email, organization, and contact information in the chat. Moving right along, we have Ms. Shari here, who is a grant writer. I know we have a lot of people asking about grant writers. If you are a grant writer, put that in the chat as well. And she's from Dash Valley. Shari, are you here?
Hi, Trey. Yes, I'm here. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Fantastic. So I just want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on this forum. This has just been incredible, and I've heard from so many incredible people and sharing so many resources. So I'm honored to be here. As Councilmember White mentioned, my name is Shari Rastigar. I am a grant writer. My background is in management consulting, and also I just wanted to let some of the folks that are on the call this evening let you all know, if you're looking for a grant writer, please don't hesitate to reach out. Some of the service offerings that I provide to some of my clients are the planning and development support necessary to execute a final proposal product. So what does that look like? So that could be pre-award support. So I might be able to help you, your organization, look for a grant, or if you have a grant in mind, you can reach out to me. And some of the support that I can provide to you is just some hand-holding to help you in reviewing some of the grant requirements, so that we can work together to fully understand the scope and the timeline of the grant. I'll work with you to collect all of the required documentation for the grant, work together to complete the application, and also provide post-award support. So once the grant has been awarded, oftentimes, there will be, you'll have to show that you're executing the grant in a manner that's satisfactory to the agency, right? So some of the support that I could provide in that capacity is, supporting with oversight, reporting project progress, and responding to any questions received from the grantor agencies about project status, grant compliance, things of that nature. So I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I'm open and available.
Sorry, can you also tell us your contact information real quick?
Absolutely. So my contact information is info, at dash Bailey.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, Manon, you have to leave, so we want to bring you on. Want to excuse anyone who may feel inconvenienced, but we want to bring you on, Manon Matchett, from Jane Bancroft Robinson Foundation. Hello.
Hello, thank you, Council Member. I'm going to share my screen. I just have a quick slide to share.
Let me give you the access. Give me 2 seconds if you want to go ahead and start talking while I get that to you.
Thank you. Good evening to the great Ward 8, to all who are participating, and most thankful to Councilmember White for this opportunity to speak. My name is Manon Matchett. I'm a proud resident of Ward 8 and have been for the last 20 years. In addition to that, most of my career has been spent in philanthropy, Adventure Philanthropy Partners, the Greater Washington Community Foundation, and now with the Jan Bancroft Robinson Foundation. So for purposes of time, I just want to just kind of offer and share some food for thought to what has basically already been said here today. One of the things that I want to highlight is that Ward 8 organizations, community-based organizations, need to be in a posture ready to receive monies. Not necessarily grant dollars, not necessarily money from corporations, but from individuals, philanthropists, people who want to make a difference in this community. In order to do that, you need to be ready to receive those dollars. So what does it mean to be ready? And thankfully, my colleague Glenn Ogilvie has already kind of done this presentation. And I thank Dion Reeder, who also gave some great points. You all need to be ready to tell your story. And I so appreciate that there was actually a grant writer who spoke. But in order for her to do her job and do it successfully, she needs to know what your story is. So you need to provide specifics. What is the motivation for doing the work that you are doing? What do you hope to achieve, or what have you achieved? Who has and who will benefit? In addition, due diligence. That means, and I know it's very cumbersome, especially for a lot of small organizations, but it is necessary that you satisfy all business and tax requirements that are mandated by the District of Columbia, in addition to what the IRS regulations are for being a 501c3, which means that you have nonprofit status in order to receive charitable contributions. And what everyone needs to be reminded of is, even though nonprofits are a business, they are a business to serve the public. And so you need to keep that first and foremost. The hope and the goal is that the work that you are doing is working to solve a problem, if not eradicate it. In addition to that due diligence, board governance is key. If you are a nonprofit leader, Your board should be your greatest champion for the work that you are doing. And as you start out, it's always helpful, to have your friends and your family to support you, to help you launch. But as you grow and as you advance, you really need to spend some time thinking about what is the expertise that you need at the governance level. Do you need someone who has a communications background, someone who knows about marketing, someone who knows about finances and can review your audit? Do you have someone who can speak to whatever programmatic activity that you're speaking about? Do you have someone who's versed in workforce development, someone who knows about education, someone who has a health background? Whatever the work that you're doing, your board should help you in advancing the work of your organization. It has been mentioned and it has been talked about, but finances and budgeting are very important. Even if you're not receiving any money from any source other than your own pocket, you can still create a balance sheet. You can still create a statement of activities, and you can actually show what the source of income is, even if it's directly out of your own pocket or whether it is in kind. But people need to know what it costs to do the work that you're doing and that you're doing effectively. Outcomes and output. It's very important to let people know what you have accomplished, what you are doing. And I want to be very clear that a lot of foundations have really kind of honed in on this and are recognizing the detriment to that, because again, some smaller organizations or new to this field of nonprofit don't necessarily understand outcomes and output. And truthfully, I don't think philanthropy has done a good job of explaining that as well, but that's neither here nor there. But it's very clear for you to be able to talk about the net change that your organization is needing. So with that being said, there are just 4 questions that I encourage all nonprofit leaders to think about. Are you an organization or are you a program? And I'm really speaking to those who have a passion or feel like they have a ministry to do good. You can actually serve the community and a specific population without necessarily being an organization. What you might want to think about is how you can partner with someone else to actually execute and get to helping others. The other thing that we need to start thinking about, if you don't exist, if you're not doing the work, then who? And I think both Glenn and Dion talked about the necessity of collaboration, partnerships, and leveraging various resources. There is no one-size-fits approach to all of this. We are not monolithic in terms of the individuals and people that we're serving, nor are their needs, nor are our solutions. So again, there is not one way to help everyone. And so yes, there may be some differences in terms of what you do and how you do it, but be clear about that. What is your scope of expertise? Who are your partners? Again, I think Dion said it best, and I've said it to my former portfolio investment partners. Stay in your lane, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. If you are a workforce development provider, you should not be out here doing healthcare programming. You should not be in the education space unless it directly ties to what you are doing. And I understand that because funding has been very limited, it has basically forced organizations to stretch themselves to the point where they're going outside the scope of who they are and really are doing what is called mission creep. Last but not least, be ready to speak on what are your community credentials. And this is very important right now. And I've heard this as a program officer where people would say to me at any given time, well, you all funded X, Y, and Z, but they're really not doing A, B, and C. I get that and I understand that. But let me say this to you, Ward 8. This is our time now. And so if you are out here doing the work, if you are out here working with people, if you are out here making a difference, someone knows and is telling that story. And so when the opportunity presents itself for you to get funded, to receive some money, please be ready to tell your story. And more importantly, when you receive those funds, please do not forget to say thank you. Whether that's a card, whether that is a letter to your funder. Councilmember, that's all that I have for this evening. Happy to share this slide with your team for those who may be interested in it, and happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
I don't see any questions right now. Let's see. Jules, are you seeing any questions?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Council member?
Manon, you've been amazing. I saw Miss Skills on here early when I popped back on.
I'm still here.
Sorry.
No problem. Are you ready for me?
Yes.
Good evening, Ward 8. I'm Eris Scales, and I have the great pleasure of serving as the Chief Service Officer for the district under Mayor Bowser and the Executive Director of Serve DC. I've seen a lot of familiar faces on the screen. I've seen some familiar names along the chat. And I just want to thank you, Council Member, for allowing us to come today to talk about what Serve DC does. And so there's many things that I heard that made me realize, ooh, we need to do a better job of making sure we communicate some of our evolved focus and some of the changes at Serve DC. But I would be remiss if I did not first and foremost thank you because you definitely serve DC from, showing up to our Toys for Tots, helping us with our snow team and helping us promote our community emergency response team. The council member is definitely working in collaboration with us to make sure that the resources that we provide outside of grants and funding support are also shared with the community. So I want to just take a quick second. There was some conversation earlier around the Office of Partnerships and Grant Services. It has been addressed, but just to reiterate that Serve DC has now absorbed the roles and responsibilities of the Office of Partnerships and Grant Services. That happened about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and it's been, an evolution. There are some services that we continued, such as the funding alert, continue to provide capacity building and support to nonprofit organizations. And then there are some functionalities that actually transferred to other agencies, that being some of the internal grants management and coordination with agencies. When we talk about grants management and Serve DC, there's a couple of delineations that I like to point out. And I know that my AmeriCorps, my National Service Director is joining this evening. She's a Ward 8 resident, Tracy Rollins Johnson. So she manages our AmeriCorps program. Serve DC issues close to $4 million, sometimes a little more than that, in funding for nonprofits to be able to bring in additional resources, meaning human capital, people, to support with their operations and programmatic deliverables to the community. The AmeriCorps program is an amazing funding opportunity for those who do not have a lot of staff, because that's a challenge. You don't have the resources to fund staff, so you can compete for those funds to bring in support. The other thing that Serve DC does by way of grants coordination and management is that we not only award grants, but we take it very seriously in trying to make sure that organizations across the city are aware of all the grant opportunities that the district has. So, it's crazy because I think when people think of philanthropy, foundations, going after traditional funding is top of mind to people. But I say, think about your district government as philanthropy as well. We award more grant funds than essentially all of the foundations combined right here in DC. So DC is doing about $125 million annually in grants. I have heard questions come up around how do I, make sure that I'm competitive? How do I go after these funds? Where do I find out about this funding? So a couple things I want to highlight. One, if you are looking for funding opportunities in the District of Columbia, I want to encourage you to sign up for our funding alert. I wanted to share my screen, but I don't want to mess around with the technology, so maybe I'll try once I'm finished. But the funding alert is our attempt at taking all of the grants that the district government has, all of the grants that we are aware of from the foundations, from the private sector, from special kind of initiatives, and we put it in one document for you, and we send it out on a bi-weekly basis. And we keep a running tab. So if you are in healthcare, you'll see separated out for healthcare. If it's education, if it's gun violence. So we try to do some of that heavy lift for you because we understand it's a lot of work trying to keep up with all these different opportunities. So our funding alert is something that you can sign up for on the Mayor's Community Affairs website. I will continue to drop it in the chat. I've dropped it a few times. And I also encourage you to check out what we call our Grants Clearinghouse. The Grants Clearinghouse is also on the Mayor's Community Affairs website, Serve DC's website, and that is where we list every single opportunity that DC government agencies are putting out onto the street. Now, I do understand that it's hard and it's very competitive. Just so you know, DC has more nonprofits per capita than anywhere else in the country. So we understand it's a competitive field. One of the things that I really try to encourage organizations to do as an entry into government funding is to go after community affairs grants. And the reason I say to go after community affair grants, so these are the grants that are issued by the Mayor's Office of African Affairs, the Mayor's Office of African American Affairs, the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs, Father, Men, and Boys, religious, etc. It's because those are great, what I call like entrance grants into DC government. So oftentimes organizations who may be new to receiving grant funds from DC government start at that community affairs level, and then they scale up to receiving grants from district agencies, which are usually a lot more, they're larger in terms of the investment amount, but they also have other complications that can come with them because of the regulations and the reporting requirements that can be associated. The other thing too is to stay on top of agencies like the Department of Human Services or Department of Small Local Business Development. These agencies oftentimes bring in nonprofit partners to support them with executing programs and to support them with their service delivery. So it's not necessarily just let me give you a grant specifically for your organization to do these existing things that you're doing, but there might be some complementary opportunities where you can start to secure funding from agencies and you have an additional revenue generating opportunity. So that's just something to consider, but the timing has to be right. We've heard people say be ready, and you want to make sure that you're not expanding yourself to try to now get a revenue generating opportunity from an agency when you have programmatic priorities that you need to focus on. And then I think that the last thing that I would kind of just kind of summarize and bring together is that the best way to be up to date, and I will make sure that we do an even better job at coordinating and pushing this information to the council member and to our Ward 8 MOKers and community affairs team, is that we do programs. We do capacity building, providing support to organizations, particularly east of the river, is near and dear to my heart. So we started something called Serve 202. Serve 202 is where we open our doors to nonprofit emerging and startup nonprofits and those who have a dream of starting a nonprofit. And we talk to them about what it means to have a nonprofit and to partner and collaborate with the district. So we have our Serve 202 initiative. We recently concluded what we called Ready for Recovery, which was a 4-part series that was targeted to nonprofits and volunteers on how we're going to get on the other side of the pandemic and things that we need to have in place and resources. And so we're constantly trying to connect individuals and organizations to foundations, to other district government grants managers, to other district government agencies. And it's also really important to me, and I give Glenn a great shout out because he collaborated with us about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I wanted to make sure that DC government grants managers have been trained and have been given the information that he and his team have been collecting with regards to the disparities and the impact of racial inequality on our nonprofit sustainability. And so that was a very eye-opening opportunity for our grants managers to understand what's happening on the front line and ways that they can come back and evaluate their evaluation criteria, how they could reevaluate who their peer reviewers are, how they could reevaluate what some of the expectations are for grants to respond, for grantees to respond to these RFPs. So we are slowly but surely, probably not fast enough for most, continuing to educate and inform our grants managers across the district. Serve DC continues to promote daily, weekly, monthly capacity building opportunities and resources, as well as funding opportunities. So, please sign up for the things that we have to offer.
Thank you so much, Ms. Scales. Again, reiterate how people can reach you real quick.
Across the district, serve DC daily, weekly, monthly.
I can't hear you.
I just dropped it in the chat, but ARIS, which is AYRIS .scales, SCALES @dc.gov.
Okay, thank you. And we also have joined. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
We're also joined by the DC Office of Out of School Time Grants and Youth Organizations. Yes, Ms. Yoakum. Am I saying it right? Tell me. There we go. I got 1 for 8. There we go.
Thank you, Councilmember White, for inviting me today, and for the team for organizing this community conversation and being part of the panel. The Office of Out of School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes, also known as learn24.dc.gov, is the easiest name to remember. It's just so the office name is just very difficult. And I am putting the information, my contact information, in the chat box now for those on the call. The Office of Out of School Time Grants is focusing on distributing grants to nonprofits, 501c3, that offer youth programming outside the school day. These programs are offered after school, weekends, summer, school breaks, and often are called out of school time, or OST for short. Our office awards about $12 million of local dollars to these nonprofits that offer programming. So they are arts, they are dance, they are sports, they are academics, they are clubs, they are career and college. So the content varies across the board. It is focused on out of school time program where kids need it most. 2 areas of support that I can address today is 1, professional development. We have an Institute for Youth Development. It is hosted at the University of the District of Columbia, where we provide free training to nonprofits, their staff, and volunteers. We support program quality, and that means having the best adults trained to work with youth. And oftentimes that means they need to learn how to work with youth. And so we have a youth development series. We also have training on de-escalating techniques. So we know there's conflict that will happen. So we do verbal de-escalation techniques through the Crisis Prevention Institute that our trainers can deliver, and just best practices from homework help to classroom management, and a whole series. And these workshops are free to anyone serving district youth. And so that is 1. And then the other piece is through grants. We offer 2 grant cycles a year, 1 for school year programming that happens during the school year, and 1 for summer programming that will happen during summer, so summer camps. 1 grant in particular that I think this group would be interested in is that we actually, within each grant cycle, there are a number of competitions. And as I heard earlier today on the call about small nonprofits and equity, one of our grants is called Small Nonprofit Grants. They are for organizations with budgets of less than $250,000 that are district-based organizations. So we will not use fiscal sponsors. They have to be at least organized in DC and registered as a nonprofit and have a budget of less than $250,000. And the grants are for up to $25,000. And we removed as many barriers as we can. There is no match. There's no audit requirement. It is a 6-page application for up to $25,000. And we work with the grantee as if it is a first-time government grant, from all of the reporting to all of the data entry needed to record participants. And we provide a ton of support to these small nonprofits through it. And our grants are typically, we try to keep them for up to 3 years, pending the budget approval and how much money we can allot every year. So in fiscal year 21, we distributed so far $9 million, of which about 23% is going to organizations serving Ward 8. So a lot of our dollars and investment comes into Ward 8 through these grants, both the larger grants, which are up to $100,000 for larger organizations, but then the small nonprofit grant for $25,000. For more information about the grant or the professional development is to visit our website, learn24.dc.gov. And I will ask that you consider 2 things: signing up for our newsletter. Serve DC has a great clearinghouse of grants. Our newsletter actually links to them every other week when the newsletter comes out. But we do highlight just youth service grants or youth grants for youth programming, because that is our target audience. And so we do have a section for grants that might be of interest to you outside of our own grants. We release our grants in October, and this year we'll release another competition in April once we know the budget for fiscal year 22. So those are just a quick summary of our office, and I'm happy to take any questions, or you can email me directly with my contact information.
Thank you so much. Very informative. Wanda, do we have any questions? I know we have about 9 minutes left. We're pushing the line here.
I'm not seeing any question, but we do have 2 additional presenters.
Okay. We'll take questions as we can at the end. I want to thank you all for your patience, guys, and your eagerness to participate and learn and hear from these organizations and give pushback and questions. This is encouraging for the work that's going to be done as a result of our collective efforts. We have Mr. Matthew Miller, Martha's Table. Matt.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well, brother. How are you?
All right. Thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of this collective platform. I know we're short on time, so I will just brief you guys. I'll make it short. For those of you all that are not as familiar with Martha's Table, as an organization, we are fairly new to the Ward 8 community. Although we've had a presence in Ward 8 with one of our programs, the Outfitters, which has been a store on MLK for some years now. So we're really excited to be a part of the community. And ever since we moved into Ward 8 with our facility, the Commons, we've been on the ground and running. So our need for the need for our programs has increased by about 400%. We have a variety of programs. We have our education program, and then the sub-programs underneath that, our health and wellness programs, which allows people in the community to come and take advantage of our lobby market and our the joyful food markets where we go out and venture into the community. And then we have our family engagement programs as well, where we have our Family Success Center and a host of other services that families can come and access from us. So with the help of generous people like all of you all here, we're sending a clear message to our neighbors in need that we're all in this together. And we really leaned in, especially since the pandemic. We've been relentlessly just out there making sure that we are providing the community with the basic needs, such as our community pop-up, where we go out and we distribute groceries to the community. Council member Trayon has, we've been assisting him and vice versa in that endeavor for, since the beginning. But we have up to 10,000 neighbors supported every week with no-cost healthy groceries that I just spoke of. Throughout weekly DCPS pop-up grocery distributions and weekly community pop-up grocery distributions, which I also just spoke of. We have about $9,000 in direct cash assistance that went out to each of the 137 families that's active in our education program to prevent financial crisis. So we have families who are in our early childhood education program that were able to receive assistance from us in that way. So we also have about 200 plus warm meals that we distribute every night on our McKenna's wagon to all of those that are experiencing hunger or housing insecurity. We also have our weekly virtual fitness classes, which I'm hoping that all of you can either take advantage of or help to spread the word. And I can include the information about that or just my email so we can exchange. I would also like to just be in constant communication with all of you anyway, as we really try to establish and maintain partnerships throughout throughout Ward 8. We also have virtual learning for children enrolled in our early childhood education programs. So in the midst of this global pandemic, we also embarked on our strategic planning process, which we knew it was more important than ever to center the voices of our neighbors. So we deeply listened to the residents over several months through surveys, individual interviews. We had small group community town halls, and agenda setting workshops where we were able to just hear their voices and to allow them to express what the current needs are, especially during this pandemic. Also, we have across nearly 1,000 touch points that we heard from those residents in several languages, including Spanish and Amharic, from young adults, returning citizens, seasoned citizens, families enrolled in our early childhood programming, volunteers, and lobby market guests. So this was an opportunity for the community to tell us exactly what they needed, what they hoped for, and what they entrust our organizations to act on. So after having those conversations with nearly 1,000 neighbors, 5 themes were consistent across each discussion: the need to foster economic mobility for one, the need for organizations who come to support community to be true and trusted neighbors, the need for proactive mental and behavior health supports and resources to ensure that older youth transition successfully to adulthood. And residents also consistently lifted up the burden of trauma from a lack of community safety as a key ever-present driver of adversity. I know we only have like 2 minutes left. I can stop there just to allow you guys time. I will include our information and my information in the chat. So, and I would love to just connect with everyone else on this line, as I'm other than council member, I don't know anyone else here. So yeah, thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to each and every one of you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We have to wrap up here. Want to thank you, Matt, for your leadership and your continued service to the ward. I think I saw Charlie earlier. No, that's definitely Charlie rode past me yesterday and gave me those 2 beeps in the snow. Was it snow? I think so. Yesterday.
I was in the van with him when we saw you on was that Wheeler? Yeah. I was in the van with him. We had just finished one of our community drops when we saw you.
Always in the trenches somewhere doing God's work, man. So I want to thank you. I appreciate you, and tell Kim Ford I said hello. We got to jump off here, but please leave your contact information in the chat. We're going to have a follow-up and some next steps next week, and we want to build on this momentum. We hope that you were encouraged. We hope that you were informed. We want to say, take that energy. I always say the richest place in the world is not the World Bank. It's in the graveyard because we take our ideas, our thoughts, our visions to the grave with us. Get those things out and release them to the earth because someone is directly dependent upon you to do what God created you to do. Thank you for joining me again. My name is Trayon White. I serve as the council member here in the Great Ward 8. Stay plugged in, stay active, and stay safe. God bless. Thank you.